Hey everyone, it's Alice the Tutor Witch here to make learning more magical and fun. Today I'll be telling you about one of the most classic witchy tools out there and one that I use every single day, which you'll know if you follow me on my Instagram story, and that's tarot and oracle cards. I'm even wearing my tarot earrings today. I have the Hermit on my left side to remind me of wisdom, solitude, and connecting with nature. And then I have the Chariot on my right side to remind me of strength and willpower and marshaling my inner forces. Anyway, in this video, I'll share some important basics, what to do to get started, and some tips that I've picked up or figured out along the way that I haven't really heard a ton of people talking about, so stick around to the end for those. By the way, I am a tutor, of course, so if you'd like to book a session with me or learn more, you can check out my website. The link is in the description below. It's thetutorwitch.com. And I made a little companion video to this one where I do a review of the 5 tarot and oracle decks that I own. So if you'd like to see some examples of those decks in action, here's some pros and cons and whether they're good for beginners, definitely check out that other video, which I'll link here too. And this is a newer channel, so if I could please ask you to give me a like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, leave me a comment down below, share this video with your friends. Any of that would really help me out to get started, and I really appreciate it. Thank you. So let's get into it. Now these cards, or the way they're used in a witchy context, is a form of divination. So we're trying to gain insight, find answers to questions, maybe even predict what the future will hold in some cases. Personally, I don't really think of divination in terms of telling the future or anything. I tend to practice more internal divination, where I'm trying to sort out my inner thoughts and feelings and connect to my intuition using the cards. These cards are great tools to dive into your subconscious and connect with inner truth. Now, as you probably know, these cards have images on them, and the saying, "a picture's worth 1,000 words" really applies here. These images represent stories and archetypes, and of course you'll have your own personal associations with them too. Tarot is a system of correspondences, much like astrology, and in fact there are a lot of interesting connections between astrology and tarot, which I'm excited to dive into more here someday. So a big question people have here is, what's the difference between tarot and oracle cards? Well, tarot is a specific set system, whereas oracle cards tend to vary really widely. So a tarot deck is pretty reminiscent of a pack of playing cards, and they did in fact originate as playing cards and are still used to play some card games today. Oracle cards are similar in that they're symbolic, and they're often used in a similar way to tarot cards, like divination or cartomancy is the cool word for that. But there's no set system. Each oracle deck has a different number of cards, different words, meanings, images, symbols uniquely made by the creator. There's a ton of creativity across the art and interpretation of different tarot decks as well, and watch my review video if you want to see some good examples of that. But those decks are usually composed of 78 specific cards. So first you have what's called the Major Arcana, the first 22 cards, and in order those are the Fool, the Magician, the High Priestess, the Empress, the Emperor, the Hierophant, the Lovers, the Chariot, Strength, the Hermit, Wheel of Fortune, Justice, the Hanged Man, Death, Temperance, the Devil, the Tower, the Star, the Moon, the Sun, Judgment, and the World. Now, these are common archetypes that often show up in video games and TV shows and so on, so you might already be familiar with them even if you don't really know much about tarot. After that, you have the 4 suits of the Minor Arcana: Wands, Cups, Swords, and Pentacles. And kind of like regular playing cards, those run from Ace 2 through 10, and then you have a Knave or a Page, a Knight, a Queen, and a King. The suits each have elemental correspondences, so pentacles represent earth or the material world, swords represent air or the mind, cups represent water or emotions, and wands represent fire or creative energy and passion. And you can think of each of these sections of the tarot deck as journeys. So in the Major Arcana, you start with the Fool that goes on this long and treacherous but ultimately rewarding journey through those other 21 cards. And in the Minor Arcana, each of the 4 suits is a journey, with the Ace representing the initial seed of possibility that grows and blossoms throughout those other 13 cards. There may be variations to those suits or cards depending on the deck, and I show some examples of that in my other video, but usually those are the actual words that you'll see on there. The images, though, tend to vary really widely across all the different decks out there, but the most classic tarot deck is called the Rider-Waite deck. The imagery on those cards is very well known, it's pretty commonly accepted, and it serves as the foundation or inspiration for a lot of the other tarot decks out there. The images do tend to be relatively straightforward to interpret, and if you look up information about tarot online, for example, these are probably most of the images that you'll see. So, now that you know a little bit about what the cards are, how do you actually use them? Well, many people turn to tarot or oracle cards when they have some kind of question or conundrum on their hands, and they're seeking inner guidance, wisdom from the universe, however you want to look at it. You can also just draw cards on a regular basis as part of your morning practice, for example, which I like to do. So first of all, you'll need to get your hands on a deck if you don't already have one. I guess you can just use cards online too if you want. The Rider-Waite deck I mentioned earlier is pretty good for beginners since it's relatively straightforward and there's so much information about it. But you certainly don't have to start there if that one doesn't really speak to you. I would say just follow your intuition and pick out a deck that appeals to you. Now, as I mentioned, much of this has to do with connecting to your intuition and your inner voice. That's why it's a good idea to clear your mind before you actually sit down and draw your cards. You want to get into a good headspace, so do some deep breathing, light a candle, do some meditation, or spend some time at your sacred space. Do a little aromatherapy, drink your morning cup of tea, whatever you want to do. I like to draw my cards every morning after I've done my morning yoga, my body scan, kind of intuition check, and meditation so that I'm sort of connected and ready to receive whatever messages come up. So on a really basic level, you shuffle the deck and then you draw some cards. The number of cards will depend on what kind of spread you're doing. So maybe you're just doing a simple single card of the day, or you're just pulling one card to reflect on whatever question's on your mind. Maybe you're choosing between several different options in a situation and you pick a card to represent each option, for example, or each card to represent a person involved in the situation. It's common to draw 3 cards to represent the past, present, and future. Perhaps you're using one of the many other tarot spreads out there, or coming up with your own. You can really do anything you want here. Now, one important thing to know about is reversals. So the tarot cards can be read not only right side up, but also upside down, which kind of alters their original meanings. Now, this can be interpreted in a variety of ways, of course. You could see the reversal as the direct opposite of the upright meaning, or sometimes the upright card represents a more public meaning, whereas the reversed card points to something going on in your inner life. Interestingly, this is kind of similar to astrology, where in some systems the top half of the chart is seen as public and the bottom half as more private. Anyway, with reversals, you really have more like 156 cards in your deck total, right? 78 upright and 78 reversed meanings. So with all the different possible interpretations, that adds exponential complexity. On a practical level, what I like to do if I have a new not super shuffled deck is I'll shuffle it, cut it in half, turn one half upside down, and then shuffle it again so that I get some reversed cards in there as well. Anyway, after shuffling, you draw your cards. Don't think too much about which one, just go with your gut or pick at random. And then you usually lay them out according to whatever spread you're doing. But that's just the beginning, the tip of the iceberg. Now the real work and the real fun starts, which is reading and interpreting the cards and divining those hidden meanings. When I draw my cards, I first like to just notice whatever reaction I have. Of course, if you're totally new to this, seeing like the 5 of Wands might not really mean very much at first, but just look at the imagery on the card and just kind of think of what that means to you, what comes up for you first and foremost. And that brings me to my most important point here, which is that, in my opinion, it's all about your personal interpretation of the cards. That is the most important thing. Whatever your intuition or mind or heart sees in those cards, I think that's what you're really looking for. That's what you're really trying to find. Yes, of course, there are meanings about there, and you should totally learn about them if you want. Everyone has a slightly different take on what those cards mean, and different interpretations of the exact same spread could vary really widely. But in the end, you're applying those cards to yourself and your own life. No one knows about that stuff better than you do. You're going to pick up on things that are relevant and useful to you in your life right now. So I'd say focus on that, even if it doesn't align with traditional interpretations. On that note, I would highly recommend doing some journaling and or note-taking along your tarot journey. I'd say the most important things to record are your personal impressions and interpretations, what's coming up for you, what your inner voice is hearing, and of course, taking notes about the system of cards and the meanings behind them can also help you learn more easily and quickly. This could be a separate journal that you have for tarot and oracle stuff. It could be part of a journaling practice you already have established. It could be audio or video clips of you just recording your thoughts and impressions. It could be like a Google Doc or something, whatever works for you. So once you've really taken a moment to register your initial personal reaction, the next step is probably to go look up some information about the cards. Many decks will come with a little book or booklet telling you about the meanings of the cards, and of course there's a ton of information just a Google search away. Maybe you'll find a website you like that you can keep referring back to. But as you're reading and learning about the cards, again, notice what parts of those descriptions you pick up on that really stand out to you. It might be something that seems to refer to a current situation in your relationships, your home life, work or school, or whatever else. Or maybe it's your internal emotional life. But whatever it is, that will immediately tell you something about what's really on your mind these days, even though maybe you've been avoiding it. What situations might you need to work on resolving, and so on. Now, if you're using a particular spread beyond just one simple card, you want to remember to look at the cards in relationship to each other and in the context of whatever spread you're using. You can zoom in and out, thinking about individual cards and then connecting them together in various ways. Look at the whole spread and how any puzzle pieces are coming together in relation to the initial question or topic you had on your mind. Like a lot of witchy tools, tarot is a skill of synthesis, of taking various symbols within a system, making connections, and weaving that together into a meaningful pattern. That is a hugely important skill in writing, in studying any humanities, or pretty much anything, or just in life, so this is a great way to practice. Now, it's likely that the better you know the cards, the tools that you're working with, the more you'll get out of the experience of working with them. To be honest, tarot can be a bit of a complex system at first, so like I said, don't feel bad if you're not picking up on a ton of meanings at first. But you can use the imagery to help you interpret. The major arcana tend to be pretty self-explanatory, and with the minor arcana, if you know what each of the four suits represents, and you start to learn what the different numbers mean, so for example, 5s are associated with change, so you can start to put those puzzle pieces together. It's one of those things that keeps getting richer over time that you could keep getting deeper and deeper into for the rest of your life. But I don't think it's too hard to get into it at first if you can just kind of relax, go with the flow, and enjoy the process. But this is actually why I think that oracle cards are great for beginners. I didn't start with oracle cards. I was like, oh, I'm going to be legit. I'm going to start with tarot. But in hindsight, I think starting with oracle cards would have been awesome. Tarot has its own complex system and also more cards in it than most oracle decks. But drawing an oracle card with a helpful piece of wisdom, a really evocative image, or just a concept like serenity or community or something, that's a lot more straightforward to understand. And then, of course, you go about the whole process of applying that concept to yourself and your life. So while you're learning the ropes, getting into the headspace you want to be in, learning how to connect with the cards and your intuition and put all these concepts together, it's nice to keep things a little simpler at first. Generally, you can use oracle cards in the exact same way as tarot cards. Certain decks might lend themselves to certain spreads, or you might just want to keep things really simple. I'd say do whatever gets you started and go from there. Kind of like astrology, the system of the cards creates this complex mirror. And looking into that mirror can teach you a lot about yourself, other people, and the world. It can help you answer questions, and it can also reveal questions or problems in your life, all of which are helpful to know about. I don't think there's any such thing as an inherently bad or good card or spread, but some of the cards can definitely seem to have more positive or negative associations than others. But even a seemingly bad card or troublesome spread could show you potential issues or flaws to be aware of, and even give you advice on how to deal with that in the best possible way. You can look into that mirror just to see what you might see or what comes up for you. But if you've got a particular issue or question on your mind, as always, it really helps to be specific. What exactly is your question? What do you really want to know? This will help you see and interpret that answer more clearly when you get it. And even thinking about your question in a preliminary way is all part of the process. Remember, these cards are just a tool to help you figure it out for yourself. Something I realized is that if you're going through a transitional phase in your life right now, doing the past, present, future spread can be really informative and helpful. This helps you kind of guide your growth and think about how you're changing over time and how you want to change. When I quit my job and decided to start doing this and transform my life, I found it so useful to do these spreads every day. to gain insight and help process the experience of letting go and starting something new. Anyway, learning to interpret these cards is a whole journey, and I kind of still feel like a beginner myself, but focus on your own interpretations first, get to know the basic meanings, and then eventually over time you'll start adding on more layers, going deeper, and remembering things more easily. Remember to focus on your own response to the cards and how they connect to anything going on in your life right now, or anything else you're learning like astrology, psychology, literature, etc. And then try to integrate everything into your own lessons and takeaways. Another tip I want to give is that it's really helpful to get to know your decks. Each one is different, like I said, and the more familiar you are with the deck you're working with, the more it'll speak to you. So here's my process for doing that. When I get a new deck, I'll draw a few cards a day. I'll reflect on them and write about them in my journal, and then I'll reverse them and put them back in the deck. When I've gotten the card both upright and reversed, I'll actually set it aside. Then I'll keep going until I've gone through the whole deck, and then I'll shove it all back together and use it like a normal deck. But this is a really nice way to get your eyes on every single card at first and get to know it better. One other cool thing I want to share about is birth cards. Your birth card represents you or a core facet of your personality or identity. Now you figure it out by taking the numbers from your birth date and adding them together until you get one of the numbers from the major arcana, kind of like a numerology type of thing. There are several different ways to calculate this that'll give you different results. So if you're interested in that, you can look it up online, find more information or different calculators for that. But I just wanted to mention that here because I think it's cool and it kind of took me a while to hear about it. So if you look up your birth card, please comment down below and share it. I'd be really curious to know. Mine is the High Priestess. All right, y'all, thank you so much for joining me. Remember to check out my review of tarot and oracle decks, check out my other videos, and schedule a session with me at my website, thetutorwitch.com. Please comment down below and tell me a bit about your experience with tarot and oracle cards and any questions you might have. And please, again, like, subscribe, and share this video. I really appreciate your help. But for now, happy learning, take care of yourself, and I'll see you next time. Hey, what are you doing? Your mama's filming, creating content, okay? Bro. No. Okay, it's timeout time.